right, I am back with an Xbox video. Not my usual, just software stuff, although we kind of are talking about software if we're talking about Xbox now and their potential future plans. As you can see, I am starting Ghost of, people said it was Yote? Not Yotai, Yote. The true PS5 exclusive that I have to play on console. This is the first game I played on console since Assassin's Creed Shadows, I think. I usually play third-person action games on console for whatever reason. I know you can use controller on PC, but anyway, so I hear this game's awesome. And yeah, so Xbox, I have show notes here, and it just says, the balls on them. This is referencing the fact that they upped the price of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate from $20 to $30 a month, so $240 to $360 a year. This is the only tier where you can get day one releases outside of like the PC Game Pass thing, and it's just a stunning price increase. You know, we all have these streaming services and we see them go up by $1 or $2 over time, and like it sucks, but like it's something that just sort of happens. And Xbox already has done that. They've done that in the past, like slowly raising the price, and then they just went all out. They jumped it 50% in a way that's like genuinely shocking. I don't think anyone in the industry saw this coming to this extent. Everyone thought Game Pass price would go up, but that much, that quickly? Okay, so they've tried to justify this by talking about the stuff they added. And they're like, oh, this is, you know, another $120 worth of value a year. Like, believe us. They have added a bunch more day one releases. They said there's 75, and then they added more games to the back catalog. The problem is like, none of these are going to be big new games outside of the Xbox original ones, first party ones. You know, I guess we can define big, but it's going to be a lot of smaller games. And sometimes that's great if the smaller game is like Expedition 33, but these aren't the kind of games that people are going to be like, oh, you know, I can just ditch everything and subscribe to Game Pass. There have been very few large scale games that have launched specifically on Game Pass. I know there's more than this, but I remember Outriders being one of them, the big Square Enix sort of failure, but kind of an awesome game. But they said there was a lot of talk back then about how they didn't think Outriders had like made back any amount of revenue that they needed to with the Game Pass launch, and that did not, from all involved, that did not seem like it was a good idea. So we don't see very many big third-party games launching on Game Pass. Over on Sony's side, we see like, you know, certain games that are launching there with some sort of partnership as like an exclusive, but people are still paying $70 for those games, so that's different. They added Ubisoft Classic Plus Ubisoft Plus Classic, which is like a back catalog of some of the older Ubisoft games, which you might imagine is a hell of a lot of Assassin's Creed games. So it's just more stuff in the backlog there. If you haven't played, I don't know, the old Far Cry's and Assassin's Creed games, I guess. And then I think what is my favorite thing, they added Fortnite Crew, which is a $10 a month subscription for Fortnite specifically. That gives you 1,000 V-Bucks, which is like $10 plus an exclusive skin. I think does it give you the battle pass? I don't know. The point being, like, you really got to be a big Fortnite fan to do this. But the point has been made that if you're such a big Fortnite fan that you want to subscribe to Fortnite Crew, chances are you're playing Fortnite all the time and you're not going to be playing the hundreds of games on Game Pass. So a little counterintuitive there. I don't think any of that is worth the price increase. I you know, we don't know all the new releases and new editions and stuff, but I don't think there's any way that's going to add up to equating to what that would be price-wise. And just doing this math, it doesn't really work. Maybe for me specifically, especially like this, I said that like I've had Xbox Game Pass for so long that you just kind of know you have it, and occasionally you'll be like, oh yeah, that's on Game Pass, I'm going to play it. But a price increase like this really makes you kind of take stock of, is this something I actually get value out of? And now at $360, that is 5.1 $70 games a year. And there's smaller ones certainly, and if you want to buy an older game, sure, but there's certainly not 5 major first party Xbox games a year unless you're like, I mean, maybe they exist, but like in terms of like we're talking about the big ones, you'd have to be like the craziest big Xbox fan in the world to buy like every single first party thing they release. In which case, you're probably going to subscribe to Game Pass no matter what. But I cannot imagine spending $360 a year on not just Xbox stuff, but like Xbox stuff that is getting offset by Game Pass. So like I could buy Assassin's Creed Shadows or whatever, but that is a third-party game, so I'm going to be paying $70 anyway. So it's it's not like everything you're buying on Xbox in a given year. And I don't even know if the value was there for me at $240, but at $360, you're like, why is this a thing? The question is like, why are they doing this? And it's really contradictory with what Microsoft has said in the past, where they believe that Game Pass, they say that Game Pass is profitable. And that seems like a little bit of a stretch, and we don't know exactly what they're counting. There's this story going around where one of the reasons behind this increase is that they lost like $300 million in potential Call of Duty sales by putting that on Game Pass, which I don't know about that exact number, but obviously you're going to lose a metric shit ton of Call of Duty sales. I don't know why anyone would not buy it, or why anyone would buy it if it's on Game Pass. And so that was part of the reason of the price increase. And then I don't, what are they going to do? Not like exclude that from Game Pass? And so it's not part of the $360 a year. So that allegedly is part of the reason. But in general, if you're taking them at their word and that Game Pass is profitable, either they think that Game Pass is so beloved and so cherished and so necessary for Xbox players that they can get away with a 50% price increase, or they're just being super greedy and are desperate, and because Game Pass is like very clearly hitting a ceiling, that they want to extract as much money out of loyalists as possible. And even if they know they're going to get some amount of churn in terms of people canceling and stuff, if the ratio doesn't offset, if enough people don't cancel to, or 50% or a third or whatever it would be with the math, which probably isn't going to happen, they're going to come out with more money at the end of it. This, of course, is another big black mark on their reputation because we're tired of Xbox doing stupid shit. And in this case, it just comes off as extremely greedy. I don't believe Microsoft actually thinks that people are getting $30 worth of value. Like everybody subscribing is getting $30 worth of value a month. Like, oh yeah, if you add up all the games, it's $10,000 worth of value and blah, blah. That's like saying owning, if you owned every DVD on Netflix, you're getting 1.2 million in savings by paying $20 a month. Like you can't use those kind of metrics. And what's going to happen now is, Game Pass subs are going to go down to a certain extent. Not that Microsoft likes reporting Game Pass subs anyway. I still remember, the glory days of Xbox Game Pass were during COVID, the glory days for nothing except video games, where it was getting like millions and millions and millions of subscriptions because everyone was home playing games, and that had a huge library of games. And then after that, it really slowed, and it slowed to the point where it was just kind of crawling toward these higher milestones, and you didn't hear anything about it forever. So it clearly hadn't reached any braggable milestones. And then what they did was they converted all existing like Xbox Live, Xbox Live Gold people over to some term of Game Pass. Like, was it Xbox Core or something? It was one of those where they started classifying all Live Gold people who were still left as Game Pass, and that jumped their subscription numbers by like a ton. And I kept trying to ask Microsoft, I'm like, okay, what percent of this new 7 million or 9 million or whatever it was added is actually new subscribers, and what part is the people you carried over from Xbox Live Gold? And they wouldn't answer me. And that's like the last time we've seen any sort of like super meaningful increase. The largest one-day sign-up was when Call of Duty launched, because that was like kind of their big rabbit out of their hat, where they thought that Call of Duty would be this, huge surge in subscriptions, where it added a lot of subscriptions, but clearly probably it did not work out well overall in the long term if they're just losing loads and loads of sales to that and it's not offset by enough Game Pass subs and people keeping their Game Pass subs and all of that stuff. And that's a trick you can only do once, because if they keep Call of Duty, free on Game Pass this year, then, if the people didn't cancel, it's just going to be the same people who already signed up last year. So the ceiling is just really closing in to a point where I think they know that. And this idea that you're going to put Game Pass on every device and it's going to blow open the capabilities of Xbox software distribution. I've never bought this. I've never bought this idea. It doesn't make any sense to me. They're leaning so heavily into, third-party devices and cloud gaming and like some far-fetched idea that Game Pass is going to show up on PlayStation. I don't know. But they themselves, like under oath in their court case, I think it was Europe was complaining about this helping them get a monopoly in the cloud market. And they're like, the cloud market is so tiny, it doesn't even matter. It's like this niche of a niche. And like, it's growing a little bit, but that's true. And I feel like the people who don't care enough about video games to own a console or like a PC that can play games are not going to pay $30 a month for Game Pass to play on the cloud with all these like core, AAA games. Like who is the person who, does that, who doesn't want the box but is still willing to pay $400 a year for game access through Game Pass? Maybe it's a tiny group of people or people that don't have room in their TV cabinet or something, but like I don't understand this philosophy. And this whole thing just feels like yet another awful decision from Microsoft. And like, they did the hardware price increase before twice recently, where it's like, okay, this is silly. Like your Xbox Series X 2 terabyte now costs $800, but it's like, tariffs and like these aren't really selling great anyway. And like Microsoft doesn't really care about hardware that much, even if they're allegedly staying in it. It's like, that's silly and stupid, but whatever, tariffs, prices, we get it. Now Game Pass, I mean, this is like their whole thing now. And you're taking the one thing that people at least used to say was, quote, the best value in gaming. And now you're really, really making people question that classification to the point where like, unless you are just playing a ton of like the back catalog games there, I don't know where the value is there. You'd have to buy just so many, or you would have had to have otherwise bought like so many of the day one releases of whatever size they are to make that worth it. And I don't get how that value is there anymore. And this used to be like, it was $15 a month 3 years ago, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And now it's double, and we get Ubisoft Plus Classic and Fortnite Crew. Like it doesn't make any sense. And I canceled it. I'm a games journalist and I canceled it. No, I don't get it for free from my work. I think I got like a 1-year code maybe like 5 years ago from Xbox, but like that was, I don't really know why, and I have not had one since. So it doesn't seem worth it. That's more than any other single streaming service I have. Like even massively expensive Netflix is 20, 22 something there. And this is like way higher than that. It doesn't make sense to me. So like if I have to play, for better or worse, if it's anti-consumer or not, Sony has PS5 exclusive games that I have to play on PlayStation. Whereas Xbox, kindly has not made that necessary. So I played like Avowed on Steam this year. And, besides that, I don't know if I want to invest in the Xbox ecosystem, like with any games really, given how unstable this is. Like I think I got Assassin's Creed Shadows for Xbox, but it seems at this point that Xbox is still so all over the place. I should just be amassing all my games on PlayStation, because so I don't have to mix and match and like wonder about like what's going to happen with Xbox in the future. Like, oh, maybe they won't have hardware next gen. Whereas like, PlayStation has its problems, but I don't think anyone is going to believe that there's not going to be a PS6 and there's, it's going to change as dramatically as Xbox has changed. And then plus, I play most games on PC now, which I'm just kind of moving away from console more generally, which is not like an Xbox specific thing. like even there, it's like, oh, well, you have Game Pass and PC. It's like, yeah, but I like my Steam library and I don't like Microsoft games and stuff like that. So it's just, it doesn't really fit in with my gaming setup now, gaming philosophy. And, you know, I'm clearly not alone in this. There's loads and loads of people who saw this and said they're going to cancel. There's very few people being like, this is still the value. Like, you guys are all just whining. And I don't know how many people will actually cancel. And Lord knows Microsoft may not report that. But again, it would have to be a really, really significant amount to offset that huge price increase. But like the point is like, if they're trying to grow Game Pass, this shrinks Game Pass. They might be making more money per customer, but you're getting less customers, and it is going to be way harder to make this appealing to people who don't have Game Pass, because it may have been hard enough to get them to sign up when it was $15 a month. Now it's $30, and now we're in this shit economy. Like, what do they think is going to happen from here? And I don't get what the plan is here. There's all these conflicting reports of like, oh, they're getting out of hardware. Oh, Microsoft says they're not. They're doing stuff with AMD, and you know, in like logistically, it's like, why would they keep doing hardware when clearly they're awful at hardware and it's just bombing for 2 generations in a row? The problem is, if you stop doing hardware, that's a giant chunk of your Game Pass player base, if not by far the largest. Like, I don't know why it wouldn't be the largest. And then you're either locking those people into last gen hardware because there is no next gen hardware, or PC Game Pass, or the cloud, or whatever. So they're kind of stuck making hardware, even if it doesn't really make sense for them to make hardware outside of just limping along to get people to still play Game Pass on first party hardware. I don't know what they're doing. I mean, I don't know if they know what they're doing. Like, but they're saying one thing, but there's all these insider reports of like chaos and people are shutting things down. Like, I wrote an article about this, but like, I genuinely believe there could maybe just not be an Xbox in a couple years. Not that Xbox is like such a disaster, it's just going to fold completely, but I think it's more of a Microsoft priority thing. There are all these reports that years ago, like Satya Nadella was like talking to Phil Spencer, and he's like, we're either going to get out of games or we're going to like triple down in games. And they triple down in games as best they could. But I mean, what is everyone spending on now? I think it's 2 letters, and it's AI. Microsoft is not the best at AI, I guess, compared to its competition, but like, that is where they're throwing a ton of money. You know, tiny slim margins on consoles and Game Pass and like all this other shit. Like, eventually I think they might just not care about it and be like, the gaming space is too annoying. We're not making any money here. Let's just take the Xbox budget and make, you know, a video simulator or something. I would not rule that out given the state of the tech industry at this point. It would be bad, I think, for everybody, for gamers, if Xbox, collapsed, or Game Pass, folded, or consoles stopping being manufactured, because you don't want less competition. You don't want less choice, even if the choice sort of sucks and they're idiots about it. You still want that in the market, and you want someone for PlayStation specifically to compete with. Like, Nintendo's, there too, but they're sort of their own thing, where it's been this PlayStation versus Xbox thing, and, PC's in there. But losing Xbox, it really kind of opens the door for a lot of things to grow that are not necessarily good in the face of, the fact that there's less competition. So I'm rooting for Xbox in theory. I just don't think they're doing anything good. Maybe they can do something good eventually, and when that happens, I will report on that, but that is not currently where we are. So, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.